that Jimmy Butler did.
Turnover, Butler. Looking for an escape edge and finds Housley. Brown lost the ball.
All right, so let me make one thing clear. My feelings of Jaylen Brown are not solely because he had about 72 turnovers in Game 7 against the Heat. It's also not the fact that he had pretty much a horrendous playoffs. Like, absolutely terrible. It is in general. I have felt this whole season that Jaylen Brown should not be getting the Supermax from the Boston Celtics. First of all, I know Jaylen Brown is good. I know he's a good player. He made second team All-NBA. He averaged 26 a game. As a second option, I know, he's a good player. I'm not taking that away. However, things have changed. A new CBA came into place. Thanks, CJ. But it makes it a lot harder to build a super team. So that 5 for $300 million Supermax, that makes up about a third of the cap. And this is a hard cap because you go into that second apron, into the tax, you start paying a lot of money. So teams are going to be less compelled to go sign multiple Supermaxes. It is a lot of guaranteed money committed, and it can get very, very expensive. So for starters, because of the new CBA, I feel that this contract, this $60 million per year contract, should really only be for the true superstars of the NBA. And when I say superstars, I mean superstars, like top 5 or 6 players. You know, Jokic, Giannis, Embiid, Tatum. Those people, maybe Booker. I'm missing a couple, I'm sure, but you get the idea. Jaylen Brown is not in that group. He's a star. He is with Paul George, right? He is with Jalen Brunson. He is in that category, the top 15 players, but between 10 and 15, maybe 17, it really depends on what you value when creating a ranking. However, the Celtics are a win now team, so it obviously makes sense to spend. I just don't think it should be Jaylen that they gave the contract to this summer. So in my opinion, I do not think that Jaylen Brown plays well with Jason Tatum. They are two wings. If they weren't on the same team, they'd play the same position, small forward. And on the court together, I very rarely see, at least with my eyes, Tatum making Brown look better and Brown making Tatum look better. I just don't. It's ISO, my turn, your turn, my turn again, your turn again. That is not how you run an offense. And when Jaylen gets the ball, it sometimes feels like the movement stops. He's an ISO guy. He'll do his dribbling, obviously with the right hand as we saw, and then he'll go do his mid-range and you hope it goes in. Sometimes he'll take a 3, but I feel like the rhythm stops. So I just don't like how he compliments Jason Tatum, because at the end of the day, this is Jason Tatum's team. It is not a partnership, which sort of leads me into my next point, which is the role of a second option. So when you compare Jaylen Brown to Jamal Murray, I think a decent amount of people would agree that Jaylen Brown is more talented, and you could argue the better player, all-around player, right? I think so. However, do you know what Jamal Murray did well? He understood he was the second option. There was no partnership, 1A, 1B. It was Jokic's team, and they'd pick and roll, and Jamal would do what he needed to do in his role to help win. But at the end of the day, it was Jokic's team, and the last shot would go to Jokic unless it didn't, and then it would go to him. He understood his role, and he played it perfectly, like Kyrie Irving in 2016 perfect. He absolutely killed it. But I feel like Jaylen Brown, he doesn't see himself as the 2. So in the middle of the season, All-Star Weekend around then, when the Celtics were cruising, Jaylen Brown did all of these millions of interviews and he was getting asked all sorts of questions. But in terms of on the floor, what stood out to me was Jaylen Brown talking to reporters about sacrificing and how he sacrifices to win. Essentially, he knows that in his head, he could be the man, the first option on another team, but he chooses not to, or he knows he can't. Whatever it is, it did not come off as somebody that was content in their role. And so if the second option resents the first option, it doesn't work. It's never worked, ever. When you look at all of the great duos in NBA history, there is a clear definition of who was 1 and 2, and the people accepted the role. So in the 80s, when it was Magic and Kareem was a little older, and it was Magic's team. Kareem was a top 3 player, but he was older, and he knew. Magic was the young gun point guard, and Kareem still got his. Same with the Celtics. It was Larry. McHale knew that. In the 90s, Jordan, Pippen knew that. Pippen may have later gone on to resent it in his book, which I actually read. It was entertaining, to be honest. But then you look at some that failed. So Kobe and Shaq at first, it worked great, right? 3-peat. But then, obviously there were off-court issues, but Kobe wanted to be the man. But Shaq didn't want to give that up. Guess what? They split. That's the way it is. Unfortunately, when Kyrie wanted to be the man in Cleveland, he split, went to the Celtics, almost ruined the team. But he didn't. Thanks, Kyrie. So Jaylen Brown, because he wants to be a first option, I don't think he's, a good fit to get the contract as a second option. I would rather a guy with slightly less talent, but knows his role. And so, when it comes down to, Jaylen resents being 2. And I think Brad Stevens, he needs to trade him while he has him to get assets. So as we all saw over the weekend, Damian Lillard finally made a decision. It was, I'm going to stay and I don't run from loyalty and I grind. And then it was, if you guys don't build a contender, I'm out. And then they gave Jeremy Grant a lot of money. And guess what? Dame was out. You requested a trade. Yes, he said he wanted to play in Miami, but he doesn't have a say. This is not Bradley Beal, right? Bradley Beal had a no trade clause. So he could go to Phoenix and go link up with Book and KD. Damian Lillard does not have that same privilege. And yes, I'm sure Portland is appreciative of the, decade that Damian was on the team. But at the end of the day, they got to find the best offer. And I'm sorry, but Tyler Hero, a 50-year-old Kyle Lowry, and some picks that'll be, pretty low, does not compare to other teams. Boston could give him Jaylen, and Celtics own all of their picks, a package. You bring Damian Lillard onto this team. The Celtics, he complements Tatum better. He's a dead accurate three-point shooter, and as we've grown to see, love or hate, the Celtics shoot a lot of threes. So it's a perfect fit. Heck, he's one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. He's clutch, he has swagger, and he's friends with Tatum. Think he'd make Tatum look better. I think they'd be the chemistry once Dame kind of got over the I don't want to go to Boston like Kevin Garnett did, it would be a great fit. But Brad Stevens should be looking at trades. Heck, Ja Morant. I don't know what Memphis is feeling. I know we just traded with them for Marcus. Boston could swing that trade. Send Jaylen over there. We get Ja Morant, maybe even throw him a free NRA card. I don't know. But that's what the Celtics should be thinking. Have that second option be a different position. Because Kristaps is the 3. So really you're looking at a, power forward or, a point guard. So that is where Brad should be at. And at the end of the day, Jaylen Brown doesn't want to be a Celtic, only doing it, only wants to be here for the money, might resent Tatum, do more interviews, things like that, it's just clearly not a good idea. So hopefully Brad Stevens does something else and he surprises us just like he did with Marcus Smart.